All right, the rest of the AFC, guys, it's not just the Browns that are making big moves. They're not messing around this offseason. Of course, we just said Browns added not just Watson, but Amari Cooper. Raiders making a huge trade yesterday. They acquired my guy, Devontae Adams. He's joining Chandler Jones in Vegas. Broncos traded for Russell Wilson. Chargers acquired J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack. The Bengals solidifying their offensive line, which was their Achilles heel. And the Bills, oh yeah, by the way, they just signed Von Miller. Chiefs also added Juju Smith-Schuster to a one-year $10.75 million deal, which we're going to get to at a point, but I was like, why couldn't the Patriots have just paid that for Juju Smith-Schuster? They could use somebody like that.
Can we just stop and applaud Ted Karras for making that list right there? I mean, that was a lot of star power on that list. Ted Karras is on that list.
Ted Karras is on the list because they needed an offensive lineman. Andy, how many teams right now are the Pats better than in the AFC?
I'm going to say 3 or 4. It's a handful. I mean, you have your obvious ones, although we're hearing good things about the Jets in free agency, and we'll see where Zach Wilson. But I think, Jags, Jets, Texans, you feel really confident. And then you start to compare yourself to some of the other teams, and you're like, well, let's see how the quarterback situations shake out in some of these places. But the scary thing is there's teams that were behind you that got significantly better, non-playoff teams like the Browns and the Broncos. And then there's teams that were in front of you, like the Chiefs and the Raiders, or equal to you in the playoffs. In the case of the Raiders, the Bills ahead of you, they've gotten significantly better. So the pack is catching up. Some of the pack pulled away, and some of the leaders are just running for the finish line. So I don't think it's crazy to say the Patriots are like the 11th best team in the AFC right now.
Ooh, and they play a lot of these teams, guys, this season. They've got them on the schedule. First and foremost, they will have to play the Browns, Phil. The Browns, I'd have to imagine, I don't know how you can say they're not better than the Patriots right now, right?
If you look at their roster on paper, it's a better roster, totally. I think where the Patriots are going to have an advantage week to week is on the coaching staff because of Bill Belichick. But we'll see how that shakes out across the board in terms of how the offensive coordinator situation breaks down and who's coaching the offensive line when they've just potentially lost 3 starters this offseason. So Andy's right. I mean, you could throw the Chargers on the list of teams that did not make the playoffs last year, Tom, that have gotten significantly better as well.
The other day we talked about the Patriots getting to 9-4 last year and claiming that number 1 seed for a brief period of time, in some ways really might have been misguiding for us. There were a variety of circumstances, and you're exactly right. And they feel that way too, Trenni, within the walls. There are plenty of important people there who think that they got an idea when the team got to 9-4 and the way they responded down the stretch that they weren't really where they needed to be mentally. And I still don't think they're good. Look, they're between 8 and 18 over the NFL. 8 at the very best, and that's because of what they did. But when we talk about head coach, that's the only place you're looking at in the entire team where you say, I'd rather have that guy. He would be the number 1 pick. He's better than everybody else in the NFL. Mac Jones isn't. Shaq Mason might have been better than most. He's gone. Kyle Duggar, yeah, maybe. Devin McCourty, maybe better than all but a dozen. But you just can't find Judon, sure, but you're not finding a lot of guys who you'd say he would start anywhere in the NFL. And just 3 years ago, when it was Edelman and Gronkowski and Brady and a number of other players, there were a lot.
Yeah, the difference to me is a lot of what the league is doing right now when we're seeing so many aggressive teams. The Chiefs getting aggressive, getting their quarterback, winning a Super Bowl. The Bucs obviously getting aggressive. The Rams more aggressive than anybody. They're building their rosters with superstars and then filling out the rest with guys on rookie contracts. Where the Patriots have built, Trenni, is through the middle, right? They've got these middle-tier veterans everywhere where the rest of the league is going with the really high-paid guys and the cheaper guys that are on rookie deals.
Andy, where does this offseason rank overall for you in Patriots history? Like when you kind of take a look at it.
As of right now, I think on the totality, and you include the coaching situation, which Phil brought up, which is, it's like, yeah, Bill's there, and Bill I trust. I don't know about anybody else who I really trust. You lose Josh McDaniels, the whole Joe Judge, Matt Patricia thing, and the players. I think it's the worst offseason I can remember. They haven't added any talent. They lost arguably their best defensive player in J.C. Jackson, or one of their top 2 defensive players, to a not crazy contract. They lost arguably their best offensive player to a trade for a 5th-round pick. They chose to move on from Shaq Mason, and all the holes we talked about still feel like holes. And maybe you ran in place by keeping some of your leadership, the Devin McCourtys, the Matthew Slaters of the world. But I don't really see where you got better on the sideline. I don't see where you got better on the field. So a team that last we saw them was getting their butts kicked in the postseason. feels like it's fallen further behind in a bad offseason.
What's wild about it is that they're choosing to do things that make them actively worse. Not McDaniels, look, he was going to go someplace, but actively choosing to move on from Shaq Mason, actively choosing to move on from Kyle Van Noy. And those are two of your top 3 players on either side of the ball last year. And they chose to do that. They chose to get worse on a team that has so much coaching staff uncertainty. And there's a point at which, look, Robert Kraft or Jonathan Kraft or anybody who's a decision maker down there is turning on the TV or the radio every single day, and they're listening to this drumbeat of what are they doing? How are they getting any better? And they can hold up a piece of paper, too, with the pros and cons on it and say, what are we doing? And I wish that someone had an answer on whether or not Bill has to provide one to them, or they just say, don't worry, he's shown he knows what he's doing. I don't know.
Well, and it's also curious to me, too. I mean, there are guys that they could have. It seems like, I read the Juju Smith-Schuster numbers. Like, Phil, that doesn't seem insane. 1 year, $10.75 million, or like even at Gunnar Olszewski, the report out was, well, they had talks with him, but he decided to go with the Steelers. Is that because the Patriots just really didn't want him, or was he like, you know what, whatever's going on here, I'm out?
When you see numbers like that, even though the Patriots cap situation is where it is, this isn't about the cap. This is about real money budgets and real spending. And when the numbers are as low as they are in those circumstances, that tells you they just didn't want those guys. Because they have 100%. The ability to Tom's point, they are choosing not to spend. They're not choosing to get rid of people in this instance, but they're choosing not to spend to keep up with the Joneses. They are not having their foot on the gas the way they did at the end of Brady's tenure, as they did last offseason. This is an approach that is, it's the original Bill Belichick approach, it feels like,
Smart.
right? Because the end of Brady's tenure, things did get more aggressive. Things obviously were aggressive last year. They're back to 08, 09, 10, it feels like to me, in terms of how they're building.
Smart way to build, dumb way to build.
Time will tell. When they took over in 2000, when Bill took over in 2000, Andy, you'll remember this as well, covering the team, it needed to be a 4-year process. They won the 2001 Super Bowl the same way they won the 2018 Super Bowl. It fell from the sky, and there were a bunch of circumstances that helped them get to it. But they weren't that good a team that year. They weren't that good a team in 2011 either. That was another Super Bowl they got to and almost won. But that was the coaching staff, and it was Brady. And I think that right now, this is what the process is. But you don't have Brady to bail you out and get you to 10 or 11 wins. This is they were rebuilding last year. They're kind of rebuilding again this year. You've mentioned the word bridge a couple times. It just is. We ain't used to it. You hate it.
I think it's a slow, measured approach. If I were to look at this from afar and try to spin it positive, I'd say they're taking a slow, measured approach, like Bill thinks he has a franchise quarterback. Like he's going to be here for a while, and he's building for the long haul the smart way. So that would be my PR spin on trying to make an ugly situation look a little bit more appealing.
That's the reason why I mentioned 08, 09, 10. Like, you had your first iteration of the dynasty. You came down a little bit before you built the next one. Well, now you're coming down off the second iteration of the dynasty, and you're hoping to slowly build towards the third.
When I was looking for a positive today, I said maybe this is all just part of a long process that they're planning for the long haul, not the short term.